acknowledge we are recording this session for the CIPR Employability Hub, and it is absolutely fantastic to have you all with us here today. CIPR Midlands, I'm the chair here, Amy, and we are thrilled to welcome you to join us as we discuss employability in PR. It's all about future-proofing your PR career, but that doesn't mean you're at the start of your career. We all know that career journeys are a little bit skew-whiff at the best of times. I don't think anyone has followed a straight trajectory from bottom to top for many a year now. So we know that PR is an interesting field to be in. We know that there's a huge amount of diversity in terms of the types of roles that you can enjoy and the directions that you can take your skill set in. Today, we're going to be hearing from a number of different speakers who will talk all about different aspects of future-proofing your career. So thank you very much to them for joining us, and I'll introduce them shortly. Please do post questions in the Q&A box, in the chat box, and I'll keep a record of those for afterwards. And then we can do the Q&A at the end, and I will ask those questions. Do get involved in the conversation online as well using the hashtag CIPR Employability. We will direct you to the Employability Hub later on as well, so you can have a look at that. So as I say, lovely to see you all here. It's a great session, and I know we've got visitors from outside of the Midlands region as well, so thank you for joining us. Our panellists today, so we've got Claire Summerfield, who is co-founder of Next Level Recruitment. Next Level are a recruitment business specialising in PR, marketing and creative services here in the Midlands. Set up during the pandemic, so we'll have some interesting insights to share about that. Claire's joined by her co-founder Laura, who will be jumping in because Claire's got a slightly sore throat today, so they will be co-hosting their session. We also have Thomas Giles. Thomas has joined us in the middle of the night in, I believe it's California.
That's correct.
And fantastic, thanks Thomas. We'll be sharing some expertise from globetrotting HR exploits and experience, and some best tips on how to manage resiliency in the job hunting market. And then we have Rachel. So many of you will know Rachel. She's vice chair of CIPR Midlands, but more importantly is founder of Spotty Dog Communications, which employs lots of people here in the region, has been recruiting recently, and I think will be doing so again soon. So has lots of information about how the market is shaping up, and will also introduce us to the CIPR's Employability Hub. This is a brand new resource that's been launched in the last couple of weeks and will showcase everything there is to know about employability and how you can get involved. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Claire and Laura. I'm going to switch my video off. Claire, Laura, feel free to say next slide when you want to move on.
Thank you.
Over to you guys.
Ah, brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much for inviting us to join you. And yeah, as Amy said, we run Next Level Recruitment, which we launched in February, which was fairly epic timing after many years of planning. But what we're going to do is give you a bit of an overview as to what we've seen in the market so far this year and the journey that the market's going on, because it is going in a positive direction, which is the most important thing. So if we can move on to the first slide, please, that'd be great. So to begin with, obviously we all know what happened in February and March, but to give you a bit of an overview as to sort of what happened, March to June to begin with, the majority of PR and communication roles were pulled or put on hold, and we started to see a few hires gradually coming back to the market in May and June, but marketing spend across all channels, particularly within retail, leisure and events, hardest to hit. B2B markets were impacted, but to a slightly lesser extent. Furlough, a word which I think most of us didn't know next year, obviously started to kick in with a vengeance and has really ranged in businesses, anywhere from 20 to 90% of teams, with teams gradually being returned from late May onwards. Redundancies started happening probably May time onwards across agency and in-house brands, and a lot more redundancies happened at a higher level and a senior level coming through. Hires that are being recruited to begin with were predominantly direct, and reshaping of businesses did start to happen towards June times, looking at the redistribution of skills and looking at the headcount spend to online channels predominantly. If we can move on to the next slide.
Thank you. So the impact of COVID on the PR industry from July to September. So it's something that myself and Claire termed as a tale of two halves for those few months. So many businesses started to come back into growth and investment mode, whilst others were very much on the other end of the scale and had to drastically cut back and reshape their businesses in order to survive. So it really was very much a tale of two halves. We found that mid-level opportunities in the market started to increase as a lot of businesses and agencies focused very much on the delivery side. And redundancies did continue to happen from furlough across all levels, with the exception in terms of specialisms of social and digital, where there were minimal redundancies made. Recruitment of social, paid and organic, internal comms and B2B technical PR roles actually increased, and we saw an increase in direct hires and through recruiters, and freelance opportunities started to gradually increase again. Many candidates who were made redundant from March to June actually were rehired and off the market, and we found that's continued through into September now. And some hiring processes have become incredibly long, whilst others for more niche roles are happening incredibly quickly. I think we've turned a role around in the space of 9 days, haven't we, from brief to the candidate actually starting, dependent on the skill set. So very much, as I've said, a tale of two halves from July to September.
Next slide, please. So I worked through 2008 when we had the last recession, and it was a very different market. Permanent went overnight, and freelance was one of the first channels that came back as clients looked to plug some of the gaps in their skills gaps in their teams. Initially, coming into this year, the thought was that it was probably going to be the same. However, freelance has been very slow to come back so far this year. It is gradually starting to pick up, but more than anything, businesses are starting to shift their spend towards junior to mid-level permanent hires. And we've seen this picking up particularly brand side, but also with B2B brands more than anything that are really looking to bring skill sets in that can help them across social as well as internal communication channels. We're starting now, as we come into the final quarter of the year, to see a little bit of a shift more towards strategically and senior focused hires. And this is both across a freelance and a permanent basis.
Next slide, please. So heading into the final quarter of the year, Christmas, I think I saw something, it was like only 100 days away. Crazy. So the market is improving, hurrah! And there is cautious confidence from many of the clients that we're speaking to, both in-house and agency side. From July to September, the roles available in the market, actually we worked out increased by roughly about 10 to 12% week on week, which is looking set to continue into Q4. So that's some really positive news to be able to share. And brands are now bringing budgets back to the table, and that supplier and agency reviews are starting to happen again. Roles are moving back out to recruiters as certain sectors of the market become candidate scarce and others become candidate rich still. And mid-level hires still likely to be the busiest area of the market, particularly across social media and internal comms. But we have to put a caveat in there that more redundancies within the sector are still looking likely across September and October, with many teams still furloughed and starting to come off that furlough process. So positive, quiet optimism returning, but we do expect there to be a few more redundancies, unfortunately.
Next slide, please. So I just want to pop a quick slide in because it's always a question we're getting about salary and benefits in the market, particularly when it's tight. The good news is, so far, we haven't seen salaries being squeezed. We're not seeing crazy low salaries being offered. So most are still in line with the earlier part of the year. Many businesses are obviously now offering flexible, and a lot are offering completely remote working. So there is a much wider pool of opportunities for people to be considering. But also on the flip side, it means there's a much wider pool of candidates applying for jobs. Some roles across the sector are now, as I said, completely remote. But we are starting to see salaries actually increase for some of the more niche markets coming through and some of the more candidate scarce. So this can be some of the more digitally focused channels, but also particularly social. A lot of people have retained their social teams and are growing them as well, going through.
Next slide, please. So in terms of yourselves, just some tips and pointers from us in terms of standing out if you are going to be looking to move on in the future. So from a LinkedIn perspective, recruiters, HR, line managers, you need to ensure that your LinkedIn profile can be found and stands out with them. So your profile, your title, your experience, your recommendations, make sure it's all on there. Showcase your skills and achievements, shout about your abilities and availability. Think about keywords. So depending on what job that you're looking for, make sure those keywords are in the job title or in your summary box. I think you can even add a QR code now to your LinkedIn profile. So there's so much that you can do to really make your LinkedIn profile work hard, so that when people like ourselves or direct hiring managers are searching for people with your skill sets, that you come up in their search. And then also join groups, discussions, raise your profile, get your connections to share your post, to like, to comment, and ask your connections to work hard for you to help. In terms of applications, direct adverts are typically, we're finding, attracting between 100 and 300 applications per role. So that's a lot. So only 1 in 8 applicants is likely to be suitable. So you really now more than ever need to tailor your CV and your application to each role, and ensure that your skills will be found through keyword searches. And try and have a think about ways that you can make your CV or your cover letter stand out. And we have written a blog about that, haven't we, on our website, and we asked some industry experts for their thoughts, and people actually read these CVs, so feel free to take a look at that. And then from an interview perspective, some clients are interviewing 10 plus candidates, if you can believe that, for a first round of interview, but they are. So you really need to make sure that you stand out, make an impact, avoid generic answers, do your background research before you go in to see them, so that they know that you've invested the time to get to know them, their brand, their agency, some of the accounts that maybe they've won recently. Show that you're interested in this role and this particular business. It's not just a case of help, I need a role, and I'll take anything.
Next slide, please. So just popped a slide in here as well, that because this is absolutely crucial in the market at the moment, is networking, and it's not something that everyone is comfortable with doing. The difference we're seeing more than anything between now and the last recession is last recession was very dog eat dog. Everyone was focused on themselves. This year has brought a much more human side, and everyone is in it together. So the networks are working tremendously hard for each other, and we've seen networks come together and support each other more than I've ever witnessed in 18 years of doing recruitment. So just a few sort of top tips in terms of: look to your past employers and colleagues and ask for recommendations, let them know you're looking, and ask them to do everything they can to help you. Friends and family is amazing once you start asking and digging around. Someone knows someone who knows someone. Get everyone involved, get them helping you. LinkedIn, as Laura said, but also really promote yourself and ask others to help you. This network genuinely is coming into its own in 2020. So join groups, online networking, and ask for intros. And also recruiters. So there's some great recruiters out in the market that they're coming back from furlough now. They can help you, but there's so many ways we can work with you, and recruiters will do everything they can to support you getting a role, but they're also there to help you with direct applications and do everything we can to support you, help you with contract negotiations, all of the skills we have to see what we can do to help you in slightly tougher times that we're in at the moment.
Next slide, please.
So we thought we'd just put a slide in at the end as well, just to, as Amy alluded to at the beginning, we actually only launched our business at the beginning of February. We'd thought about doing it for the last 5 years and thought we'd put everything into our P&L, but we missed off pandemic, so lesson learnt. And we just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of the kind of journey that we've been on, and to tell you that, you know, there is a great opportunity out there as well if anyone's thinking of doing that. So we'll be lying if we didn't say there was quite a few tears. We're coming out of this with a lot more grey hair, and there's been some blind panic moments at the start. But we really focused on getting our heads back in the game, looking at the market needs and the opportunities. So putting aside any perception of what we thought we would be as a business and what we thought the industry would want, and instead looking at what the market actually needed and where we could see some opportunities to work. We looked both at the short-term wins to actually keep our mortgages being paid, but we looked at the mid-term goals and then the longer-term aims as to what we wanted to do. And I genuinely believe a good business plan and a growth plan needs all of those elements in there. We adapted our business plan as we needed to, and most importantly, then we made the plan and we're sticking to it. It's incredibly easy in a tough market to get pulled left, right, and centre and just think, I'll go where the quick money is. But we've decided we're sticking to the plan. We know what we want to do and we're going to work hard to achieve it. You've also got to have confidence in your skills and abilities, and it's really hard in a tough market because the knocks definitely come quickly, but you have to celebrate the wins, even the little small ones. The little wins along the way are a really important part. And this one, we've had to definitely coach ourselves to do this, is to still take some time out to actually rest and recuperate, because this year is exhausting for everyone on many, many levels. And also keep reminding ourselves that more than anything, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Next slide, please. I think it's the final slide. So this is just a little bit about us, not necessarily from a recruitment perspective, because I'm sure most people know about recruitment, but just how we're trying to differentiate ourselves. And as Claire mentioned, when we set up our business, we really try to listen to what our market needed and respond to that and answer it. So at the beginning of the year, we set up a talent page on our website. It's our shop window into the talented candidates available for opportunities across the regions. Myself and Claire are extremely passionate, can't stress that enough, passionate advocates of the talented people and businesses and agencies in the regions. So the first step for us was to set up a talent page on our website, and it's confidentially done, but any candidate, freelancer, contract or permanent that's looking can have a profile on there. It's a shop window for our clients to come on. We've had some clients go, does this role even exist, Laura and Claire? We'd like to take a look on our talent page and you'll find out. It's just a nice way for us to shine a spotlight on the talented individuals. We're now in phase 2. We're going to be launching our agency roster next week called Connect, which is all about us championing the exceptional agencies in the region. So we're the middleman between agencies and our in-house clients. We speak to both. And we're speaking to a lot of in-house brands at the moment who are looking to partner up with a new agency, or they're going for a digital transformation and need a new agency. And we have been posing the question, why automatically go to London and Manchester when there's some very good talent on your doorstep, your neighbours? Good point, Laura and Claire. So we've set up Connect, and it's a free portal. It's a free page on our website where we can champion the exceptional agencies within the regions as well as our talent. And then also from a candidate perspective, we've been in this market for a very long time. We're not going to say how many years because that makes us feel very old. But we're here to support our networks genuinely in any way that we can in challenging times and good. So if you've sent off a CV or you've seen a role direct and your agency candidate and it's in-house, I had this chat with a candidate yesterday, you're not sure how the interview process or what you should do from a CV and a cover letter because you've always been, call us, drop us an email. We're here to help, not just if we've got a position, but if you're trying to find something direct as well. We want to help get as many people back into the world of work, and from a freelance perspective, build your roster as much as we possibly can. So I think our contact details might be on the next slide, but yes, so we're here to support as many people as possible. I think that's it.
I think that's us.
Great, thank you so much for that, Claire and Laura. Really, really appreciate it. We'll do the Q&A at the end, but I know a couple of questions have already come into the chat box, so there's some great stuff to share with you when we get later on. I'm going to move on now just because we are squeezing a lot in today, so we will come back to those questions. And I'm thrilled to introduce Thomas, who is joining us, as I say, from the other side of the world. So it's horrible o'clock in the morning, but thank you for being with us. We do appreciate it. And I will hand over to you, Thomas. Oh, I've lost your audio, Thomas.
I'm back. Apologies. Yeah, Amy, if you could go to the next slide. All right. So first, good morning. I'm in California, and it is 4:21 in the morning. But it's still it's a pleasure and honor to be here today and talking about this. I think Laura and Claire shared some really important information about the job market and also the market and opportunities for freelancers and probably firms and what's going on. And I was watching a lot of the comments and questions that were coming up, and many of them were about the mechanisms of finding work. So how do I deal with an applicant tracking system? How do I make my resume stand out? But what I want to talk a little bit about, because it's still very important, is the need still to have really good career goals, and then how to have resiliency as you move through this. Laura and Claire, I loved your story about starting a business in February of the year of the pandemic and the experiences that you had going through it. So I think that talks a lot about this illustration, because I call this my 2020 year picture. All of us started the year kind of in our boats rowing with what we assumed would be the rules of engagement and how we would manage our careers and move forward. And then February, March, April, it all kind of fell apart, and everything that we had counted on and all of our expectations and the old rules of engagement kind of went out the door. And when that happens and people become anxious and are looking for work and it's harder to do that, it's very often about finding the job and getting it and the mechanisms of that. And those are very important. But what I want to talk about today is also the importance of staying true to your career goals and having the resiliency to move through this. I think Claire and Laura talked a lot about patience and resiliency and also admitting that they're human. They had moments where it was really hard, and they talked about tears. I think all of us, to some degree or another, whether we're looking for work or we're managing our consultancies, are experiencing that in this pandemic. And it's not a UK thing exclusively. It is a global thing. It is really, I'm in the United States, which has rather notorious figures about the experience with the pandemic, and it's all impacting all of us, and we're all going through this together. So I want to talk a little bit about goals and the importance of that, a few reminders, and then spend a little bit of time at the end reminding some important tips about resiliency. So Amy, if we could go to the next slide. So I think the really important thing to think about, we all have a target job or a career goal or a path that we wanted to follow, and the pandemic and the resulting economic chaos that it's caused, as well as there's a lot of social unrest going on in the world right now, and things are tossed up. This is certainly true in the United States, but I think it exists globally. There are a lot of things and assumptions that are being challenged, and the world is going through a readjustment in many respects and many different levels. So it's still important not to just fret and say, I have to find some kind of job because I need income, is to find the right job. If you take a job that's not right for you and you've compromised on your goals and your values, you're probably not going to be in that job or have that gig for very long, because it's going to either be unsatisfactory for you, or your employer is going to notice you're not really into it and you took a job just to have a job. So some points to remember about this, if you could click the first box. Be really clear about what your values are. That is just as important now as it was at the beginning of the year. What are you willing to do? What's important to you? If you're going to work for a large organization, who are their clients? And do you respect those clients? Can you make peace with that? So really be true to your core values and how they kind of drive you. And when you're thinking about your career goals and a job you might take, click the next box. What do you like to do? So it's when a job market is constrained or challenged, there may be a desire to compromise on what you really like to do to just have a job. And I would really argue against doing that. It's tempting. It's a quick solution, but it's not a long-term strategy. So be really clear before you even start looking at jobs and seeing what's out there about what do you like to do, and what's the evidence that you are good at that you could explain if you were actually invited to an interview and could talk about what your career passions are. Next box, please. So obviously your skills, what do you know how to do? And there's a great exercise that I'll be happy to share with anyone if they're interested, where you kind of write down what your passions and skills are, what you believe they are, and then you really sit down and put pen to paper and think about, what do I do that illustrates these things? If I say I'm passionate about animal welfare, and you're talking to an organization that is in the pet food business, what are the evidence in your life, the things you've done that would illustrate that passion? or if you're saying you're a social media expert and have used that to get great business results for a client or an employer, what are the examples? Very often we know we can do this, we go into an interview, but when we're asked for examples, we struggle to enunciate that. So it's really important that you're clear about these things before you even begin looking for that target job. Could we look at the fourth box? And then obviously preferences. And right now, again, there may be a desire to compromise on this just to have the job. Yeah, I could do a 2.5-hour car drive on the motorway to get to work. That's okay and that's fine. But 2 months later, when you're stuck in a traffic jam and you're going to be 2 hours late getting to work, that might have been a mistake. So again, being really true to who you are, knowing yourself before you even really begin targeting jobs and looking at that, it's really critical. Let's go to the next slide. So it is important to have this clarity. I've talked about that. And I think even before setting career goals, you need to take some time to reflect and think about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. So self-reflection for me is really, really important, particularly if you've been furloughed or made redundant, or you were a freelancer and you lost a contract and you're sitting at home and you're looking at your coffee or teacup and you're thinking, oh my God, I've got to find another job. I've got bills to pay, groceries to buy. It's still important to take the time to reflect on what's going on and validating what you're trying to do in your career and making sure that it's right for you relative to where you are. You need to have the self-awareness about who you are and what your innate preferences and strengths are in order to really target a good job that's going to be a good fit for you. And there's lots of ways to do that. There is a great assessment you can take online called Strength Finders through the Gallup organization that can give you a great framework of your innate strengths and then for you to think about how you could use them in your career. Let's go to the next box. I think that Claire and Laura talked about this, but really seek out trusted advice. And that's not just professional people. Family is, I completely agree with that. It's a great, resource. It's a great part of your network. And, be willing to talk to people and get their advice about what they want to do. One of the best pieces of advice I ever received was from a chief human resources officer who was making me redundant about 8 years ago. And she said to me, you should really be a consultant. You're working in a corporate setting. I don't think that's for you. And I thought, well, that can't possibly be true because I've spent the last 25 years doing that. And that's what I want to do. But as I went out and reflected on what she said and really thought about myself, I realized she was probably right. And that's what started me on, beginning a consultancy, which has been a remarkably successful experience for me and for my clients that I've worked with. I've had a lot of fun and I believe have done some really good things for them. Let's go to the next one. So validating your aspirations, again, I think that's part of really, I had a long-term career aspiration to be a chief human resources officer. And it was when that individual kind of said to me, I don't think that's your job. That really made me step back and think about it. Well, maybe they're right. And I took the time to kind of take a break to really step away from doing work to really think about what I want to do and really getting clear about that. And when you have that clarity, you're going to go forward and probably be more successful than if you just plunge into a job market or into finding kind of a gig or something to do as a freelancer and stumbling around. So be really clear about what you want to do and precise about it. It will help you be successful in finding that next thing or in moving your career goals forward. And then fundamentally, it's got to be right for you. So don't compromise on something or do something. If you see something and you have a gut instinct that says, this doesn't feel right, I should probably do it and say yes, but I'm not enthusiastic about it, pay attention to that reaction and be willing to walk away from something, even if popular opinion around you says, great, Tom, you found a job. Finally, you go do it. That's the right thing to do. If it's not right for you, be willing to have the courage and move forward and find something else. Let's go to the next slide. So once your goals are in place and you've been through that, some things to think about. So the first box, please. Really make sure you take the time to do this and to work really well. A lot of people some people are working and they're wanting to do something else and they say, yeah, I want to become a freelancer, but I'm so busy at work right now, I can't find the time to do it. With all due respect, I think that's an excuse. If we really want to do something, evidence and studies of adults show that when we want to do something, we will find the time to do it. So if you're not making the time to do it, maybe that's a sign that what you're saying you want to do isn't the right thing to do, or you're not as enthusiastic as you are about it. But if it is, put the time into it, invest in it, and take the time to move your goals forward and really work on it. Next box. Measure how you're doing, and reflect on it. If you interviewed for a job and you were one of those 10 people that were in the first round and you didn't make that cut, measure your progress, reflect on what happened. What did you learn from that experience? And apply that in future endeavors as you're trying to implement your career strategy or goals. Next box. So as I said, embrace failure. You're not going to get the first job you applied for. Some people do, they're lucky, but more often than not, you're going to try and you're going to go up for things and it won't always work out the way it wanted. And it's very easy to get dejected and disappointed and discouraged. Look at that as a learning opportunity. Figure out maybe why you didn't get it. What did you learn from it? Thank the person you interviewed with, even if they didn't hire you, and ask them for feedback. It's a great technique, and learn from that and apply that learning in your next attempt to find a job or a gig or something that is aligned with your career goals. Next box. I think Claire and Laura really hit on this, but really keeping your network informed about what you're doing, and that you're looking and making sure your LinkedIn profile is pristine and really speaks to you and represents you. Another thing that I have learned to do that's really important, if I read an article or something or notice something that resonates with me and reflects my expertise, I share it on LinkedIn. So I don't say I'm looking for a new client or I'm trying to find a job. I've read an article in the Harvard Business Review about the importance of trust in business relationships, and I think it's really a great read and worth spending the time looking at. And I'll share the article. What that does is it shows that you're active, you're a thought leader in your craft, and when people are researching you online as a potential candidate or as a freelancer or as a consultancy, they're going to look for those things that show that you are thinking about your field, that you are involved and well informed. And this is a great way to demonstrate that. Next box. We already talked about the importance of expressing gratitude, but this is both, when you are interviewing, I have noticed with clients that they often will interview people and they'll be interested in them, but the person never follows up with them. There's no email or note that's sent back thanking them and reflecting on the time they spent together. It's really, really important that you do that. And you show people that you're grateful for the time and that they're interested in you, and thank your network. If people give you advice, send them a note, maybe send them a gift card to Costa or something, but just show them that you're really appreciative of the time they're giving you as you're trying to implement your career strategy. And finally, be flexible. So as I already said, I thought I wanted to be a chief human resources officer. And it occurred to me 8 or 9 years ago, or the universe basically began to say to me, maybe that's not the right thing for you to do. So the worst career strategies are the ones that are not flexible. They're set in stone, and people stubbornly try and execute on them when it's evident that something else would be a better fit for them, and they would probably have more fun with that. So be open to, and have that mindset and be flexible as you approach what you're trying to do. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so a little bit on resiliency. So this picture to me, this is in September of 2020, the new global workplace, which is basically your front room, your off of your kitchen, your spare bedroom upstairs with a table, a monitor, and we're all working from home, which is funny because for years and years, as I've traversed the landscape, worked with clients, talked to people, everyone craved telecommuting. That was the big thing. Why won't my employer let me work from home? Why don't they trust me? Suddenly we're all being trusted and we're all working from home. And I think a lot of us are finding out it's not necessarily the paradise we thought it would be, especially because it happened so abruptly and it's full time. I think people miss collaboration. So I want to talk just briefly finally about some resiliency tips in managing through this, both in implementing your career strategy as well as working remotely and staying engaged. So the first tip, if we can click on that, and I think that, Claire and Laura touched on this as well. Patience is really important right now. Things are not working in most cases as quickly as they used to. Clients are not getting back in touch. People are a little hesitant about making financial commitments, whether it's a direct hire or engaging a consultancy and putting budget money to that. There are signs that that's picking up, both in the United Kingdom as well as the EU and the United States, but it's uneven. So you may not be able to move forward on your career strategy and nail this as quickly as you used to. So really being patient, being patient with the fact that you have to interview using Zoom or other forms of online communication where your preference would have been to go and have a face-to-face interview. Just work through it. You'll get to where you want to go. If you become impatient or frustrated because things aren't as they used to be, that will probably undermine your efforts. Next box. The idea, as Claire and Laura said, R&R, I completely endorse that 110%. I think it's particularly if you're out of work and you're at home and you're trying to connect and find a job, it becomes almost a manic pursuit, and you're putting in tons of hours and you're forgetting that, a great employee is a healthy employee, or a great consultant is a consultant who is taking care of themselves and is at their best when they are present and doing work for you. So take care of yourself. It's really easy being at home. When we had to drive to work, we had a routine. And when we woke up at 6 a.m., we knew we had to be on the train or in our cars by 7:30. So we had 90 minutes to exercise, have a little breakfast, get the kids set for the day, and then hop in the car and go to work. Now you're at home, and so the temptation, I've got lots of time, I don't need to go for my walk or go work out or do that. That is going to unmind you. So continue to take care of yourself, be healthy. Along with that, there's a temptation when you're working from home to be working all the time. And that is a real problem. A great best practice I've noticed some people doing in this time is to put their offices in a plastic box. So when they're done working for the day, they have something from a container store and they can put all their papers and their laptop and everything in the box. They lock it up, they slide it under a table, and now they're off work. And they're at home with their families and they're relaxing. They're watching some Netflix in the evening and they're getting to bed at a reasonable hour. They're not doing work at 2 a.m. because their laptop is there and they're working from a home office. So avoid the 24/7 temptation. Next box. So nurturing your network, I think we've all said a lot about this, but it's really important to stay active, especially if you're not working right now and you're looking for work. Don't disappear into the ether. Be really active out there. And again, sharing things you've noticed or read or ideas on LinkedIn. You don't have to say I'm looking for a job. It's just to let the world know that you're still active, you're still thinking, and you're really valuable to them. And it will occur to them to be engaged with you and when they're looking at you as a possible job candidate. Next box, please. Volunteering and giving back. This is actually a great thing to do in terms of feeling good about yourself, about doing stuff. And there are ways to do this remotely that are really amazing. There are a lot of organizations, much like the CIPR, what it's doing with its employability initiative, that there are ways, even if you're not working, to give back. And if you've been out of work or furloughed and you're trying to stay, positive and feel like that you're contributing and have purpose, this is a great way to do that. It's also a great thing to put on a resume when you're between jobs or between gigs, or to add on as something that you did. It shows that you have a social conscience and that you are focused and willing to work with people. And then finally, the last box, being a thought leader. And again, this is about being out on LinkedIn and finding opportunities to come to events like this, ask good questions if you're not a presenter, and just be out there and be visible to people about what you're doing. All right. And I think if we have the next slide, that's it. And I did not include my contact details, but I will be happy to let Amy know what those are in case any of you would like to find me. I'm an advocate of supporting people doing wonderful things at work and have based my career on that. So I believe even with a pandemic and all the constraints that has imposed on us, that there are still possibilities and many ways to execute on career strategies. You just have to have the resiliency and the tough skin to manage through these challenging times. I think things are improving. I'm seeing evidence of that globally, and Claire and Laura confirmed that in their presentation. So have faith, stay true to yourself, and you will still achieve great things in your career and satisfaction in life. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much for that, Thomas. Some really, really great insight there, and thank you for, again, being on in the middle of the night to share it with us. I will come back when we come to the questions. There are a few in the chat box that are relevant for you as well, so when we get to that stage, we will bring you back into the conversation. I'm now going to hand over to Rachel, who is going to give us a whistle-stop tour of the Employability Hub so that we have plenty of time to do the Q&A as well. So over to you, Rachel.
Thanks, Amy. I know we've only got a couple of slides and there's loads of questions, so I'll try and rattle through. Happily, lots of the points I was going to make today have already been made by Claire and Thomas, so it's nice that we're all speaking on the same page. Obviously, as mentioned, I'm joined today wearing my two hats, founder of Spotted Dog Communications, but also a CIPR champion. I sit on the Midlands Committee and the UK board, and there's been some great work done centrally by the CIPR directly to respond to concerns from CIPR members around job security. But when Amy first asked me to speak today, she knew that I'd recently hired some team members. I wanted to share that perspective as an employer looking for talent. Like lots of companies, COVID has impacted Spotted Dog, but we've quickly responded, working out what resource we need based on the expected business needs we have in front of us. So we've done a bit of restructuring, but it means that we've welcomed some new people to the team. So the image you can see in front of you here is an image of Natalie, who joined us a couple of weeks ago. Originally, when I was doing these slides, I went on LinkedIn, because what's quite exciting at the moment is when you do go on LinkedIn, there's loads of people posting up that they're starting new jobs. I know a few months ago everybody was posting up looking for work, and of course we will continue to see a bit of that as furlough ends, but right now LinkedIn can be quite an inspiring place to see people posting up that they've joined various places. So the message from me is, and as you've heard today, is employers are hiring. But it is tough out there. Claire talked about 200, 300 applicants. In our latest recruitment round, we had about 50 applicants for a role. And normally in recruitment for us, when we put a role out there, there's been sort of a war on talent for a long time. And so you would tend to get maybe 20, 30 applicants, and you would always see some standout applicants that made it really easy. For us at the moment, with having such a high volume of applications, it was really, really important. We always like to think our recruitment process is fair, but we needed, when you're dealing with such a volume, we put in a completely new process. So we had a scoring system in place, giving points against the match to job competencies, academic performance when we're looking at the more junior end, creativity and initiative. And yes, those people that put out covering letters where you could see they clearly put a lot of effort into their application, scored highly than those that sent generic letters. If I ever get a Dear Sir letter, I already, people are on a back foot. And my pet hate also is people who write driving license incorrectly. That doesn't mean they won't get a job, but it's for me, it's attention to detail that can, be the difference between getting to the next round and not. And I also value those that are committed to professional development, such as CIPR or CIM, because it just demonstrates they go, kind of put a bit of extra mile for their career. That's really important. And echoing what Claire said, is really my recommendation would be to spend time on fewer applications. Don't just apply for anything, because the employer has so much more talent available than ever before at the moment. So if you're not a strong fit for a role, your chances of success are a lot lower. So make your choices carefully. This situation won't last forever. So, don't worry, gosh, I need to apply for something, keep the faith that roles are going to start emerging. And it's really important that you don't just kind of take anything, because in the end, if you kind of go into a role that's not right for you, it's just going to be a painful experience for the employer and for yourself. So it's much better just try and be patient and make sure that when you apply for a role, it's for the right reasons. Keeping the faith. I always believe that right now there's three scenarios. Things will either get better, they'll stay the same, or they'll get worse. So the law of odds, 2 out of 3 chances, I'd be happy with those. And it feels scary right now because you look back with rose-tinted spectacles. I think, life was so much more easier. But really, in the communications industry, with a landscape that's constantly shifting, work has always been predictable. I always think running a business, you can only ever see about 3 months out, and you've just got to be open to change and be really agile as the landscape shifts. If just moving on to the next slide, really just talking about the choices that might be open to you right now. And I think a big challenge if you're looking at career options is that you're in a position of choice. Often when you change roles, it could be that a factor has really influenced your decision. You've seen a dream job, you've maybe had a house move or a life change, or you've been made an offer that you can't refuse. So often you actually don't have as many choices as you do that are available to you right now. So and rather than being quite liberating, it can be really scary. I completely get that. And Thomas's advice from earlier is really, really important. Choose what makes you happy. Look at your work experiences from the past and what you get a buzz from. I'm fortunate that I've worked in-house. I've worked in a London consultancy. I've worked in the Midlands for a long time, and I freelance too. And obviously I've grown Spotted Dog from being a freelancer to a kind of a larger scale business right now. And having worked in loads of different roles, I can completely see the perspective of, kind of what you get out of each role. So what I loved about being in agency is it was really focused. You become a subject expert in an industry, and sometimes you can see the work end to end. So you can sort of you're part of a larger organization, whereas sometimes in consultancy you're kind of at the end of the pipeline where organizational and strategic decisions have already been made. Obviously we do work at a strategic level often, but often when it's kind of launching a product, lots of decisions have already been made, so you don't get to see the whole picture. Obviously I've worked the majority of my career in agency, and I love the variety of experiences. It's really fast, but you've got to thrive on change as well, because we're constantly working with projects and things are changing. And so some people who've worked in-house can find that change, quite a departure. And also in an agency, often there's a commercial compromise. You're kind of working on campaigns and activities that are rooted within a commercial parameters. It could be a budget, it could be a time scale, it could be the choices already defined by the client. Whereas working within an organisation, sometimes there's a bit more flexibility, because it's not about making the agency, from a commercial perspective, achieving the agency's objectives. And then finally, in freelance, being your own boss is amazing, but you need to be comfortable with that feast or famine scenario you have. You have to cover all bases. You have to deal with HMS, RC and software and all sorts of things. And you have to be quite entrepreneurial. You've always got to think about feeding the beast and what's down the line, and also be comfortable with time out. And when the phone doesn't ring in the early days when I was a freelancer, if it was a nice day, I'd get out on my bike and go and do a few miles around the country lanes, which is wonderful. And then the other option, and you might want to tap Amy up for this, is to consider a portfolio career. And Amy's doing fantastic things right now, where she's wearing many hats and she has many email addresses, and she works with a variety of clients in different ways. And I know you're absolutely thriving on that, Amy. So there's many different choices out there. I just really say the final thing kind of is, as Thomas already said, really, if you've got the benefit of time at the moment, embrace the opportunity and rather than be fearful. So use that time to upskill your skills professionally. Obviously, big champion for, the light's gone out here, I'm going away. I'm big supporter of what the CIPR does, and being a member means that you can tap into a whole resource of training and development. If you're a non-member, you're still welcome to, but you might have to spend a little bit of money to join courses. But yeah, use that time to upskill. Look at also your lifestyle skills. If this is the time, if you've always had that craving to take up horse riding, or kind of spend more time in the garden, embrace this opportunity, because I think it's kind of going to be a golden time. I think next year we're all going to be frazzled again as we're back on the hamster wheel, if that's the direction you go down. So, and we might reflect back and appreciate drinking cocktails at 2 in the afternoon. Not that I've managed to do much of that myself. And then also, look at mentoring opportunities, not just being mentored by people, but actually giving your time to mentor others. the benefit you get yourself from reverse mentoring is huge. And actually, I mean, I get a lot of buzz out of supporting young talent. Don't do it for commercial reasons, just do it because that's what I get a kick out of. And so, you know, think about job satisfaction, not just about how you earn, but, you know, all of the skills that you can participate in your work career. And all of these activities can open new doors. So as kind of Thomas has said, really putting yourself out there is the best thing you can do. Just moving on now to the next slide, looking at the CIPR Employability Hub. It was launched a couple of weeks ago. It is a member-only resource, but if you join it, you can access that straight away. I mean, if you follow the CIPR channels on social media in particular, there's always kind of resource that we share as part of just the digital publishing. So you can access a lot of resource, but really, if you join up as a member, you can get a load of resource. There's a really nice video library covering how to create a standout CV, virtual interview tips, face-to-face interviews, personal branding, how to maximize your voice and achieve confidence, and getting more from LinkedIn. And I know that resource is going to be added to over the coming months. There's also some really nice sections on coping with redundancy support, how to go independent if you're considering that as a route, and then all of that learning. If you are a CIPR member, you get 5 CPD points for watching various videos and stuff like that. So it all helps to develop your professional skills and capability. So that's just a whistle-stop tour, and I guess I know there's lots of questions, Amy, so back over to you really for you to get us quizzed.
Brilliant, thank you very much for that. So Thomas, Claire, Laura, if you want to come back on camera as well. We have had a lot of questions come through, and I know we're quite tight for time, so I'm going to ask you all to speak relatively quickly. James mentioned right back at the start, any advice around applicant tracking software and this kind of element of instant apply on LinkedIn? If we're having so much of a volume of applications, is it really the people who are trying to get the job, or are they trying to tick a box and show that they've applied? And that's something that Adrian echoed, saying how much of the 300 applicants are actually comms or PR people and how many are doing it for universal credit job centre reasons. So I don't know whether Claire and Laura, you wanted to start with that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it is a really tricky one, and don't get us wrong, when we say there's 100 to 300 applications, there is a huge proportion of those of people who are completely and utterly irrelevant and are doing it 100% as a tick box exercise. The difficult thing with a lot of adverts being done directly, and particularly on LinkedIn, is that you start to then see the adverts being closed quickly because they've had such a high volume for people to get through. So there's a couple of things really. A lot of the applicant tracking systems do work on keywords as well. So at the moment, in terms of a lot of businesses recruiting directly, nearly all of their internal recruiters have been made redundant. That part of the industry has gone over the last few months. There's a lot of people have gone. So it is going through filtering systems more than anything. So firstly, you need to make sure that you're getting all the right buzzwords and the keywords that those applicant tracking systems will be looking for, which typically, if you look at a job spec or an advert for the job, you can go through and recognize the keywords that you really need to be matching up and hitting in your CV.
Programs, aren't there, that you can use?
Yeah, and there are software programs that you can go through that will help you to make sure you're hitting the right words on your CV. I would also say for applications that you put through for the likes of LinkedIn, but particularly if it's on Indeed or an aggregator along those lines, they don't work well with CVs that are in a PDF format or have been created to look beautiful in our industry. They work well with a standard Word document. When you apply to something, sometimes it's on LinkedIn, depends how it's set up, but certainly through Indeed, they will convert your CV just into a Word format. And when it comes through, you can lose a large proportion of what you've been trying to say and achieve on it. So there's a few wins you can do in that respect, but I think in terms of trying to get around with the mass applications going on is, as we've said, really look and only apply for the jobs that you know are right for you. Don't just be applying for anything out of panic. But also, if it's a company and a role that you really are interested and you really want to go for, have a look into that company, look who the line manager is, look who one of the hiring managers would be, send your application in. But I would be tempted to follow it up with a LinkedIn message or an email to them directly saying, I've seen your job, I've applied through the system, I think it looks absolutely brilliant, I love what the company has done, I saw your latest reports, I've seen this work that you've done, I really look forward to hearing back from you.
I was going to ask Rachel that actually, because I was going to say, if you were to put metaphorically an advert up on LinkedIn and then somebody saw, I don't know, 56 applications and thought, I'm just not going to bother, but they then got in touch with you directly, how would you feel about that? Would you be hats off, well done for being proactive? Would you be like, no?
No, I absolutely love it. Yeah, anything that people do. I mean, I've interviewed people who, I mean, I did actually hire once someone who bought a bone in for the dog, and actually they were the wrong person for the job. And I was so impressed with their creativity and initiative. I completely, I've learned from that. That was many years ago. But yeah, I love, you know, anything that, you know, shows that people really care and are really passionate. I mean, but don't go too far about that. You know, don't send me bunches of flowers, because, you know, that would also be bad. But yeah, anything that you can do to stand out, definitely.
And I saw a fantastic example the other day of, because so many people are, once you've got through the application stage and you're getting to the interviews, there are some clients are interviewing a tremendous amount of people. I saw an example of a guy who videoed his kind of icebreaker that you would do at the start of an interview, and he sent it to the client the night before his interview. So it really stood out in their mind and showed them that he was willing to go the extra mile. So it's all of, don't go crazy, but think outside the box at the moment as well.
Great, thanks guys. Thomas, I've got one that I'd love you to start on, if you may. Harriet asked about how you negotiate at the moment. So you thinking salaries, thinking benefits, thinking packages. Is negotiation still the same? Can you still stand your ground? Should you be grateful at any opportunity that comes your way? So how do you respond to the current external environment when it comes to negotiating?
Yeah, I think it's really important, and I think that that you know, Claire and Rachel and Laura have hit on this as well. Don't be desperate. You know, going in and you know, being willing to compromise on what you're trying to do, and what your minimum requirements are. If an organization, an employer can't meet that, be willing to walk away from that. And you know, I don't see evidence that employers are trying to take advantage of this situation. And I think Claire and Laura touched on this as well, that salaries are not being lowballed, and you know, that there's 500 people out there, so we don't have to pay as much. I haven't seen that happen anywhere globally yet. So I don't think you need to compromise. I think you need to be respectful, and as much as you can explore in advance what the employer or what the potential client is willing to pay or offer, and really making sure that that aligns with you, and not going through an interview process knowing that you probably couldn't afford to take the job if it was offered to you, is really important. So I think the headline, Amy, is that the rules of engagement haven't changed. You be really clear about what you need and the value that you bring, and be willing to represent that. And if an employer or a client simply can't afford that, be willing to thank them and move on, and keep looking for the thing that will match that. I know that in my experience, when organizations have hired someone who may have been out of work for 2 months, but in their previous roles made 20 to 30% more than what the job they're being offered pays, they come in and they might for a brief time do good work, but they are probably still going to be looking for a job that restores their earning capability, which means that they won't stick around very long. So chasing after something and trying to convince someone that you're okay with a 30% pay cut, most good employers, if they're thinking about it, are probably not going to agree with that. So save yourself the time, and again, be patient and look for the thing that pays you fairly and gets you the right opportunity. And certainly don't be desperate. Don't come across, that's not going to help you in the interview process or when you're pitching a client from a consultancy perspective.
Brill, thank you for that, Thomas. I'm going to be quick on this last one. So Charlotte has asked, what are the key skills you need to develop in PR right now? So maybe one skill from each of you. I don't know whether, Thomas, you want to go first? One key skill you need in PR.
Yeah, I think the ability, particularly is to show that you can, you can create, value for the client. So you're not going in with a textbook that says in PR you should do this. It's more that based on what your organization is doing, here's how I can add value, that I'm able to understand a business strategy or a business challenge and how I can apply PR skills, social media, et cetera, to help the organization, move forward on what it's trying to do, particularly right now in this environment. There are a lot of organizations that, as they are reopening after lockdown and coming back, are desperate for advice and guidance and support on how to position themselves in the market. So really, how can you understand that and apply value to what they're trying to do and help them be successful?
Great, thanks, Thomas. Rachel, one key skill.
Rather than the technical skill, I would say resilience, because we've been talking about mental health for a long time, and I think it's just the workplace is tougher than it ever was. So you need resilience right now to kind of cope with what you're going through. But hey, when you get into work or your next role, you're going to be learning new stuff. Things will change, and in our industry, in our landscape, we are in a changing environment. The nature of the work we do, new technology influences the way we do things. You've got to learn. You've got to, I go back to the old days when I was phoning up the Sun and trying to pitch in for stories, and you have to be quite resilient when 100 journalists will tell you no, they weren't interested. So we've always been in an industry that's got to be very solutions orientated to overcome problems. So that's the skill that we need to keep working at. And I think in particular, people entering the industry, we sometimes see an exodus of people once they get to that account manager level, because they realize they think the glamour of PR is all kind of parties and stuff like that, and actually we're problem solvers, and multitaskers and jugglers and negotiators and strategists and creative, and the demands and skill set that we need in our industry means that you've just got to be able to cope with a lot of juggling. So right now, resilience is and coping techniques and working out how you overcome blocks in the road is key, because there's some big blocks right now, but once we're over those blocks, there'll be another few heading down the track. So I think if we can all learn to cope better in an uncertain times, I think that will stand you in good stead for whatever you do in your career.
Great, thanks, Rachel. And Claire and Laura to finish us off.
Yeah, so we're along the same lines, but I would probably say commerciality more than anything. I think, a lot of people come into this industry because they love it and they have a passion, and it's never losing that passion and that continual creativity, but always fundamentally remembering underneath it, this has to be commercial. Clients will be looking for value. They will be looking for ROI. They will be looking for the reason why you should be working with them and doing what they need. So I think commerciality isn't necessarily something that naturally comes to people, but I think the more you focus on it and the more you learn and you understand your value, the better going forwards.
Great, thank you to all of you. There are some more questions, but I'm going to finish off the session, and then I know Rachel's happy to stick around for a few more minutes after the recording. Perhaps the others are as well, but we'll finish off the session and then we'll look at some of those other questions if we've got time. Thank you for joining us. It's been really great to have everybody with us here today. This session is being recorded for the CIPR's Employability Hub, so it will be available to view again afterwards. Our next event here at CIPR Midlands is on the 15th of October, and that's the next in our masterclass series. These have been taking place monthly since April, so we will send out information on the theme for our October event shortly. We also have the CIPR elections coming up from the 2nd to the 16th of October. This is your chance. If you are a member, you can get involved in voting for the next president and the council members, as well as perhaps standing for council if you want to as well. So if you are interested, if you do want to find out anything else about that, feel free to get in touch with me. Our AGM at CIPR Midlands takes place on the 29th of October, and we'd love to see as many of you there as possible. And if you are not currently a CIPR member but would like to be, we can get you some money off. So the Midlands code is MIDD. So Midlands discount code, if you want to become a CIPR member, is MIDD. So do take a look at that. And if you want to find out anything more about CIPR or what we do here in the Midlands, let me know. We are also looking for new committee members at the AGM as well, so feel free to get in touch if you want to find out a bit more about that. So it goes without saying that everybody has been absolutely fantastic today. There's some lovely comments in the chat box as well saying thank you. So I'm going to stop the recording now, and thank you to everybody. But for those who do want to stay on, we can carry on for a couple more minutes, but I will stop the recording now. So thanks all.